From footsteps outside her window to terrifying scratching noises, these are 3 very scary true someone's outside horror stories. 3. The screaming in the walls. It was around 1972, and I had just married my sweetheart. He was in the Air Force, and we were stationed at an old base that was being torn down. They were giving away houses to anyone who would live in them. So we got this big, beautiful house for free. It was so nice, like straight out of Gone with the Wind. There was a balcony with 4 pillars holding it up. My bedroom was right under that balcony. One day I was lying in bed watching TV when I heard chains dragging metal moans. At first I thought it was my husband. You know, sometimes he gets into these weird moods and makes all kinds of wild noises. But then I realized it wasn't him. The noise was coming from the balcony above me. I told myself it was probably just some kids messing around. After all, there were military kids everywhere. Then one night I woke up because I heard someone screaming in the walls. Now, I didn't think much of it until I heard the sound again a few weeks later. This time I was a little more awake, and I could hear what sounded like fingernails scraping against wood. I jumped out of bed and ran to the window. All I saw was a full moon and some trees swaying in the wind. Then I heard the noise again, closer this time. Whatever was out there was slowly moving across the balcony above me. I called my husband at work to tell him what I'd heard. When he came home, I told him about the noise, and he said he'd look into it. He went up into the attic and looked around. We also tried to find where the noise was coming from inside the room. We couldn't find anything. So we decided it must have been some pipes or something. That was until we moved into our new house. A few months later, we were woken up by the same exact sound. It was coming from the closet. We both screamed and ran out of the room. It was in the middle of the summer, and we live in Arizona, so it was really hot. But for some reason, I started ripping off all the clothes from the closet. And when I opened it, there was nothing in there. But then I felt something soft and squishy under the clothes. It was like a piece of bark. I took it out and looked at it. And on the bottom, I could see something written in pencil. It read, "Don't let the screamer out." Then I saw a small hole in the side of the closet where something was trying to claw its way out. The hole was just big enough for a hand to fit through. We ripped everything out of that closet, but we never found any other messages or holes. The only thing we found was a loose floorboard. We pulled it up, and underneath we found a hollow space. We looked in it, but it was too dark to see anything. We turned on the light, and that's when we saw a diary with a lock on it. My husband pried open the diary and started reading. It was filled with scribblings and drawings of monsters and demons. One page caught his eye, though. It showed a man kneeling next to a pit with a shovel in his hands. It was labeled "The Screamer's Grave." According to the writings, the Screamer was an evil demon who lived in the house. If you angered it, it would claw its way out of its grave and drag your soul to hell. Of course, we laughed at first. But after seeing what was written in that book, neither one of us wanted to go into that closet ever again. In fact, we ended up boarding up that closet door and turning the room into a storage room. For a while, we didn't hear anything else. Then one night, we were awoken to the sound of heavy footsteps pacing back and forth on the other side of the closet door. They sounded like the steps of some kind of monster. My husband grabbed his rifle from the closet and stood guard all night long. In the morning, of course, the closet was empty, but that wasn't the end of it. For years, every time we slept, we were awoken by the sound of the Screamer clawing its way out of its grave. It never stopped. Even now, decades later, I still hear those sounds in my nightmares. 2. Scratching at the window. I was staying at my friend's house in Los Angeles for a few days. Her family had gone out of town, and she needed someone to watch the house. The house was pretty old and drafty, but it was really quiet while I was there. On the last night, I was awoken by loud scratching noises coming from the window right next to my bed. I described it as someone taking their fingernail and scratching it across the glass. The noise kept getting louder and more frantic. I remember sitting in bed, fully awake but paralyzed by fear. I couldn't bring myself to move or make a sound. After what felt like hours, the noise slowly faded away. Of course, in the morning, I got up and went straight to the window. It was huge, almost floor to ceiling, and made of those old square panes of glass. And all along the edges where the panes met the frame, there was damage from what looked like fingernails. I must have stood there looking at it for a good 5 minutes, unsure if I should call my friend or the police or what. But the more time that passed, the more I started doubting myself. Maybe I really had just imagined it. I mean, the house was really old. Maybe there were just some mice or birds in the walls. I ended up calling my friend anyway. She was shocked when I told her what I'd heard and suggested I call the cops. The officer who answered the phone didn't sound very convinced. But when he came over and saw the damage to the window, his tone changed immediately. He told me to stay in the room and get on the phone with my friend so she could come home right away. The two of them spent a long time examining the window and the rest of the house, but they never found any signs of forced entry or animals. Apparently, the officer even looked in the attic to check for raccoons or something. But he told me they couldn't have possibly been a raccoon because whoever did this had used their fingers. He wouldn't tell me exactly what he meant by that, but I could tell by the way he said it that it wasn't normal animal claws. He and my friend were both freaked out, and they ended up staying in the house together for a few nights just in case. But they never heard or saw anything else. To this day, I have no idea what was scratching at that window. 1. Footsteps outside her window. I'm a woman in my early 20s. A few years ago, when I was in college, I lived with 3 roommates in a house near campus. It was an older house built in the 1920s, and it was pretty run down. The windows in our bedrooms were old and single pane. They didn't seal properly, and you could hear everything outside. Our street was pretty busy, so most of the time it was just traffic noise. But occasionally we'd hear people walking by outside our windows. One night, I was lying in bed watching a show on my laptop when I heard footsteps. They were slow and deliberate, and they were happening right outside my window. At first, I thought nothing of it. People walked by all the time, but then I realized something wasn't right. These footsteps weren't human. I don't know how to explain it. It was like the person walking outside my window had really heavy shoes on, like clown shoes. It was really unsettling. At first, the footsteps were slow and far apart, but then they seemed to be getting closer. I could feel my heart beating faster and faster as I listened. Then the footsteps stopped right outside my window. It was silent for a moment, and then I heard what sounded like a low growl. It was like someone breathing heavily. I remember feeling so terrified I couldn't move. I literally froze. I didn't dare turn on the lights or get out of bed. What if whatever was out there saw me? Then I heard the footsteps again, but this time they were inside my room. I screamed and threw my laptop across the room. It hit the wall and fell to the floor. The footsteps stopped. I stayed perfectly still and listened, but I didn't hear anything else. Maybe it was just my imagination. Maybe I was losing my mind. In the morning, of course, I got up and went to check my window. I looked out it and down to the ground below it. I didn't see anything, but when I turned to leave, I noticed something strange on the carpet. There was a perfect set of footprints leading right up to my window. Whoever or whatever had been outside my window had left a set of gigantic clown shoes prints right on my carpet. And that was that. Nobody ever explained those footprints or the footsteps, but sometimes in the middle of the night, I swear I can still hear them. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, check out more stories like these on our channel.